Welcome, Glenn Parker, to the Positive Leadership Academy podcast. So happy to welcome you here and being with you. You have something that we have. You have that positivity, right, in your book and what
All
you
the time.
do. We're Positive Leadership Academy, and sometimes we get mistaken, like we provide the wrong drugs for you to be positive, and we don't believe in that. So I want to welcome you because I think we're from the same tree, right? Maybe different branch.
Yeah, yeah, and I think so. Yeah, and that's why I was really looking forward to the conversation with you, is because I think we're going down parallel paths, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation and to hearing what your listeners, your followers think about the things that we talk about in terms of leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to I'm always curious, right? What triggered you, what inspired you, with
Yeah.
the concept of positive influence leadership, right?
Yes.
Um I believe that we are what I call post COVID-19, right? In different aspects, economy, politics, the way people work these days, right? Hybrid,
Sure.
virtual set. And I think leadership evolve, right? But for you, what inspired you to really do this kind of work especially during the pandemic, which it was very confusing time.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. It's actually a good one because it really goes to the heart of what we did, and to both create this idea and also to write these books. And by the way, we're actually working on a third book in that series of positive influence, which I'd like to mention because there may be some people out there that have something to contribute to it. But what inspired me was, in some ways, an unfortunate event. A gentleman named Bill, who was a client of mine, started out as a client of mine a number of years ago. He brought me in because I was a specialist in teamwork and team building, and he wanted to convert his organization from a functional organization to a team-based organization. And so I worked with him and his leadership team and the members of the organization for several years, and we got to that point where people were working in teams. Then I said, well, Bill, it's been great, and I think it's, time to move on, and let the people sort of handle this thing on their own. And he said, wait a minute, I want to do some customer service training for my people, because many of them deal directly with customers either out in the field or on the phone, and I think we could do a lot better with that, and it's a critical to our business success. And I said, well, I don't really do customer service, but I know some people that do it. I'll be glad to bring them in. He said, no, I want you to do it. I said, as I said, I don't. He said, you'll learn. And Bill was not someone you sort of argued with. He was about 6'5" and a big man with a very powerful presence, a powerful voice. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I did. I did customer service training. I learned it. He said to me, I said, well, how am I going to do this? He said, you'll learn. And I did. I learned. And we finished that in about a year, and, pretty much ready to say goodbye again. And he said, well, I just heard that corporate is coming down with a business ethics class. And it's a required class. Every employee will have to take it. And he said, Glenn, I know I'm not going to like it. I said, okay. He said, I want you to do it. And I said, I don't know anything about business ethics other than, off the top of my head, but it sounds like something maybe an attorney would do for you, because it seems like there's legal aspects to it. He said, no, I want you to do it. He said, you'll learn. And I did. I learned. And I became kind of a minor expert in business ethics and customer service, and actually extended my business because other people started asking for those things. And I said, wow. And the final aspect of it, he said to me, by the way, I gave your name to the president of the company because they want to do an offsite team building with the leadership team. And he said, I think you'd be great at it. I said, okay. He said, here's the number. You call his assistant and you make an appointment to meet with the team. So I called, I made the appointment. I said to Bill, I made the appointment, I'm going to have to meet with them on Tuesday. Do you have any advice? So he said to me, don't fuck it up. I said, what? So what did he mean, Javier? You know what he meant? He said, Glenn, if I recommended you, you're in. He said, I recommended you because I know that you can do it. And so what happened, I did the offsite. It went rather well. This was the day before, in a time before cell phones. And it was hard work. It was long days. I finished up on a Friday night at about 7:30. I'm exhausted. I said, but I'm going to find a public phone. So I find a public phone, and I happened to have Bill's home number. I called. Fortunately, he answered, and he said, hello. I said, hi, it's Glenn. I didn't fuck up. So I got a notice about 4 or 5 years ago that he had passed away, Bill. And there was a memorial service. And so I was preparing to go to the service, and I did go. And I started to think about my relationship with him, and therefore his influence on me. And what he got me to do things that I hadn't done before. And he was a positive influence on me. That's the conclusion that I drew from all of those experiences. And I got to the memorial service, and I talked to a whole bunch of other people, whom I know because they had worked for him over the years. And it turned out he had that on a lot. He had that kind of impact on a lot of people. I came home. I said, boy, I cannot be the only person that this has happened to. There's got to be other people who have had a person or people in their lives who have had been a positive influence on them. I think I'd really like to write about this. I think it's probably some serious behaviors or characteristics that are associated with that type of person. I call up my son, and I said, this is what I want to do. He and I don't work together. He has a completely different career in financial services, but he's a leader. He has a leadership role. And he said, I told him what I was planning to do. He said, Dad, I'd read that book. And I said to him, well, how'd you like to write it with me? He said, I would love to do that. So we started out on that journey. So that's how by own personal experience, and this has been a big part of my life, is I've learned, I try to reflect on personal experiences that I had and pull them up as an opportunity for me to learn, and then to pass that learning on to other people. So that's how I got inspired, and I'm to this day still inspired.
Yeah.
And I think you asked about, about how did this all fit in with COVID? Well, what happened is we finished the book, and we're about to release the book in 2020. And of course, COVID hit, and the public said, nobody's going to read this book. So we put it off. And we put it off for several months, the release of the book. Meanwhile, we had already thought about it. We might do a second book. We weren't sure what it was going to be about. And my son said, Dad, we're sitting right in the middle of a second book, COVID. And
Absolutely.
how we wanted to see whether this idea that we had about being a positive influence leader applied during a major world international crisis. And that's how we got started on that.
Yeah. And it's so amazing what you're saying, because if I look back, if I reflect on the leaders that I had when I was in corporate, there's one that comes to mind that was basically that, always stretching, always challenging me, always giving me the way to take a risk, and really believing. And I think that is the influence, right? And you can be strict, you can be authoritarian,
Yes.
but with that approach of really believing in that person. And then I look back at the leaders that I had where they were the opposite, right? It was more about punishment, reward type of approach, and really follow my path, follow my steps.
Right.
Don't do anything differently. Those are the ones that really your talent you just don't want to go to work anymore. You just don't want to do that extra mile.
Right.
And I think it's great that this individual really pushed you to find out greatness, because that's how you do that, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are good examples there too. And it's interesting because when we start to talk about positive influence and positive influence leaders, sometimes even in just social situations we're in, people want to, just like you did, they want to tell us their story. Gosh, I had this person, my first job out of school, and many people have a story. And so what we were trying to do was to catalog what do those people actually do that has a positive influence on you? And that was really the goal of the book, was to find out what those things were so that other people could aspire to that. People who were in training and development could train future leaders on how to do that. Current leaders could receive the leadership development training on how to add that to their repertoire. So there was a lot of practical uses. The research that I have done throughout my entire career is what I call action research, which is, it's not knowledge for the sake of added knowledge, but it's knowledge for the sake of taking action. I want it to be actionable stuff because I've always been a practitioner. I've always been somebody that's trying to help other people lead an effective team, develop other people and the like. And so it's always wanting to be action research.
I have a question. I'm curious because for me, when I look back into my type of leadership and how I became a good leader towards the very end, and then I left the corporate world and decided to open my own practice. But it was a lot of mistakes, right? For me, failing is learning. So
Sure.
you need to go through that and really be aware of certain things. When you were doing this research, what was the catalyst or the aha moment of, yes, positive influence leadership or being a good influence to shape leaders? When you were doing the research for these leaders, how that came about? It was more of keep failing, because I think failing is great. The more you fail, the better you learn. Or is it more like they were naturals at it? They had a great uprising. They had a great company work for.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is actually it's actually in the first book. Is failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is a step on the road to success but you have to be, as you were, ready to learn from that and say, okay, next time I'm going to do this. But let me take you back to the research to answer your question, which is, I think of the research as sort of bottoms up, which is it's coming up from the people that we talk to. Like, we went in with the idea, we wanted to know, what does a positive influence leader do? Very general, very broad question. And so people would start to tell us all sorts of things that happened to them, that leaders, just like your examples, and people had no trouble telling us that. I will say, as an aside, and we can talk about that a little bit also, about 3 or 4 interviews in, one of the people we talked to said, Glenn, you're asking me about a positive influence leader. I've actually had a lot more negative leaders. He said, how come you're not asking me about that? And we went, my God, we really need to ask that question. My point is, what we learn a lot from the people that we talk to, and we put into practice. So we started asking people. We went back to the first 3 people we interviewed and asked them that question: do you have any negative influences in your life? But let me get to what we did with the information on a positive influence leader. As we looked at the results and looked at what people told us over a course of about 50 interviews, it looked like they fell into 4 buckets. And eventually we named them. We named them leaders who are supportive, leaders who teach, leaders who are motivating, and leaders who are role models. And so it turned out that, and some leaders, by the way, were more than one. But generally speaking, people had what we call the primary style. We call them styles or types. And people are familiar with Myers-Briggs and a bunch of other style inventories. And people were also very familiar with my inventory called the Parker Team Player Survey, which was 4 different types of team players. And people in many, many organizations around the world, have used that. So I was familiar with this idea, but I didn't go in thinking that that was the way it was going to come out. So we had these 4 different types. The supportive type is the one that says, you can do this. I got your back. I'm with you. I believe in you. You have the talent and the skills to do it. I'm not going to do it for you, but I will be here to back you up. If you have any questions, if you hit some barriers, I will help you get around some of those barriers. So the person is supportive of you. So therefore it could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a podcast host, it could be a boss. The teacher is somebody who teaches you what you need to know in order to be successful. It may be skills, it may be experience, it may be values, it may be about the culture. You know, Javier, there's a form that you fill out if you want to get your manuals printed and out. But let me tell you something. Talk to Joe down in the print shop. He'll get it done for you. And by the way, you know, the boss that you work for, here are two things that you should not do if you want to work with him. Teaching about the things you need to know in order to be successful. And it's not always how to use a program or how to do customer service training. The motivating positive influence leader, and this is also a very critical one. This is someone that kind of pushes you to be your best self. And they're also someone that often sees something in you that you don't see in yourself. And I had one. My first boss was that, Larry. I was a little research nerd. I looked up stuff and I wrote reports, and I looked up more stuff and I wrote more reports. And he thought that I could do something else. And he said, "What do you want to do in the future in your career?" I said, "I don't know, but it seems like all those people across the hall who are doing leadership training are having a lot of fun, and a lot more fun than I'm having writing these reports." He said, "It's a funny thing because I'm going down south next week and I'm going to conduct a couple of training workshops." He said, "Why don't you come along and teach something during both of those workshops?" You know, and my lips started to quiver. Like, what do you mean? I don't know anything. How could? He said, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out." And I said, "Okay." So we did, and I did, and it went really well. But you know what he could have done, which some leaders would have thought was perfectly fine. He could have said, "Glenn, here's my notes, here's my slides. Once you teach the class, you know what I'm talking about. I'll sit in the back of the room and I'll give you feedback at the end of the two." No, he gave me a 2-hour unit to do on the afternoon of the second day. It was pretty hard to screw that one up. And
Yeah.
even I couldn't screw that one up. And I came out and I said, "Wow, this is what I want. This is my true north. This is my purpose in life." And from then on, I started doing more leadership training, and I got into organization development and so on and so forth. But that was the moment. Like he saw something in me, Larry. That's what the motivating person. And the role model is just what you would expect. Somebody you look and say, "Oh, that's how it's done." You want to be a podcaster? Watch Positive Leadership Academy. That's how you become a podcast host. But you have to figure out how that fits with your persona. For example, I'm a big sports fan, and so the ultimate role model up until recently, the Olympics, um, was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was to a generation of basketball players a role model. The smart ones who looked at Michael Jordan as a role model didn't try to copy his jump shot. What they did is they copied his work ethic, which was
Exactly.
first person in the gym in the morning, last person to leave. I'm not leaving until I can make 90 out of 100 foul shots. That work ethic. So those are the four types and the four styles. So everybody has the ability to be any one of those four styles. We happen to use the one what we call your primary style. It's the one that you're known by. But some people can be more than one. All right, that's not unusual. And so, can you change? Which is very often people say to me, can you, if I want to be more of a supportive person, can I do that? Yes. And what we did, because after a while, people were starting to ask us these questions about, well, how do I learn who I am? And so we developed a self-assessment instrument.
Okay.
And so you can fill it out, and it gives you a reading on what style you are now, or what styles you are. And then there's a workbook that you sort of fill out, and it tells you how to develop a plan to be more of something or less of something, to expand your repertoire. Because what we found is that what we call a transformational positive influence leader, that person is situational. They look at the situation, they see, "Oh, I see this is what is needed right now. This is what this team needs right now." And then they do it. They don't say, well, I'm a role model, so I don't do that. I'm not supportive. No, they go, this is what that team needs right now. So the really effective ones have that flexibility to do what is needed at the time, at the moment, for the group, for the team, for the organization at
Yeah.
that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. To be more effective. And one thing that I'm capturing there, and thank you for sharing the different roles. What I'm capturing there is the essence of when we are doing workshops here at the Positive Leadership Academy, we talk about three major components for leaders. One is your energy source, right? How you get your energy source. And the other one is your purpose. And the other one is do everything with love, right? And we're not talking about romantic love. We're talking
Yes.
about unconditionally love.
Caring.
And what I capture what you're saying is that sense of love, right? And it's not love for doing it, is I want the best for that individual moving forward.
Right.
And that's what I notice in a lot of leaders these days is they're missing the mark, not because they're not performing well, it's because they're not investing in their people, right? And that love component that I see you there, right? Either the motivational leader, the person that teach, right? The role model, right? Is that ability to love their team member, not judging them, but seeing them is an asset. The other thing that I love is, and I always say this, all my clients know this, no pressure, no diamonds. You gotta put yourself through very uncomfortable moments in order for you to elevate to greatness. Nothing is gonna come easy, right? We all want the easy recipe, but we know that, if you cook very well, that tastes better if you cook in a microwave, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I think that if it's easy to sit back and say I'm okay with being supportive. I'm okay with saying you can do this. I'm here for you. I will do what's necessary. I can help. But to really step up and help you, for example, find your purpose in life, find your true north. That may take some real effort on your part and stepping out a little bit of, as you say, your comfort zone to get to really what you can be and what the people in your organization need is to grow as a leader. And that's, of course, as I said, this is action research. We want use this information not because, oh, that's interesting. Oh, isn't that interesting? No, it's interesting, but what do you do with it? That's what I want. I want people to do something with it. And so that's my
yeah, absolutely. No action, nothing will happen. I'm curious to know what that role of paying it forward, right? And how that can enhance, right, the leadership effectiveness. I always believe, we work with companies as well, and we go there not for a quick fix, but to make them flourish and be able for them to be sustainable to keep moving forward. And how this plays out, the paying it forward as a leader.
We went in thinking that the really effective positive influence leaders would pay it forward, that they initially, the ones for whom this came almost naturally, were ones who had benefited from a positive influence leader early in their life, early in their career. So they would tend to take that because they benefited and help other people. And so they were constantly paying it forward. Sometimes people don't, they think that this came, this concept of paying it forward came from some marketing strategy or it came from a movie. There was a movie called Paying It. No, it actually came from Benjamin Franklin, who actually came up with this idea. And so a young man came to him and said, could I borrow some money? And so Benjamin Franklin said to him, I will give you this money, but on one condition, that you don't pay it back to me. You pay it back to someone else, i.e., pay it forward. And when you do that, you make it the same condition with them that they don't pay it back to you, they pay it forward. So that's where the idea came from. And so that is the case. And so people, when we ask people that specific question, you have a sense that you are paying it forward. And many people gave us examples where they did it specifically with a particular person. Now, so other people didn't, but they said, that's how I approach things in life. It's my general approach, because they couldn't come up with a specific person or example, but they paid it forward just generally in life. I drive people crazy sometimes because I go into my favorite coffee shop in the morning and and buy coffee. And as I check out, because they know me pretty well there, I say, Margaret, there's someone in the back that has a 16-ounce cup of coffee. I'm going to pay for their coffee. And she says, okay, because she knows what I'm doing. And so when the person comes up, I'm already way out of the store in my car and out on the road. She will say, a handsome gentleman bought you coffee this morning, or something to that effect. And people go, really? And and if I'm caught, if someone says to me, they run outside to thank me, I say, don't thank me, pay it forward. Buy someone else coffee, or buy someone else a sandwich, or or say hi to them, or give them a pat on the back. Pay it forward somehow. Yeah. So, but you kind of want to live this whole thing. Actually, you want to live it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I buy breakfast sometimes for people that see them in church, but I don't talk to them. They don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And they get kind of surprised. Like the first question that come to mind is like, are you gonna sell me insurance? I'm like, no, I'm not selling you anything at all. I'm not selling you anything at all, and you don't have to pay me back. Just
Pay it
like you
forward.
say, hey, make somebody else.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, we did a lot of interviews because we talk about positive leadership and what it is to be a positive leader. And we talk to the armed forces, and we talk to people that do a lot of social work, people that do, for example, the police, the firemen. And it's very interesting because they're doing something with purpose. They're protecting, right? They're protecting the nation. They're protecting their neighborhoods. They're protecting you from fire, from disasters. I mean, and they have a very clear sense of purpose. And when I talk to leaders, right, and we're talking about leaders that are making, 7 digits or above, and I said, what is your purpose? What are you here for? And they're like, well, I'm here to retire sooner. I say, wow. But what about the people that you work with? What about, like you said, that paying it forward and build those leaders, right? I think I encounter a few leaders that say, no, I'm building up the next generation. So this company can be, it can be 100-year-old company. That's what we want. That's what we want to do. And I'm building up and grooming people. I'm giving all I have. Or there's leaders that I know that say, I'm giving all my information, all my secret sauce away so they can be better leaders, right? And that purpose is so interesting how in the private sector, they get paid more, but there's that motivation just for the financial gain. Some leaders, I'm not saying all of them. And in the public sector, you see teachers, for example, that they are battling with all kinds of things, and they're there. They're there serving, right? Without paying for it, and creating leaders, right?
Right.
For this society.
Yeah, I was blessed because my mother was a teacher, and so I have such great regard for teachers. She was my first and my best teacher. She taught me to love reading, and so I always did, and eventually it translated into writing. Yeah, so that it's in fact, our next book is about teachers who are a positive influence. But we can maybe just to talk a little bit about that, because we're starting to work on that right now. But back to your point about what's your purpose? You mentioned, you ask people. I always say, no leader ever wants to have on his tombstone, here lies Glenn Parker. He increased market share.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true because nobody cares. Like when I tell stories, nobody cares how much millions of dollars I sold for a company that is no longer in business. I have a final question for you, and it's funny because I came to United States in 1984 during the LA Olympics. And I have seen so many things happening, right? I mean, I've seen the market crash. Used to live in the Bay Area, so I saw the ups and downs of the internet.
Right.
So many things happening, obviously, COVID. Now we are going through, I think any time is a difficult time, but especially for the young leaders out there that they haven't navigated crisis. How can they implement, obviously, first of all, get your book, get the assessment going so they recognize if there are positive influence leaders. But how can these leaders use this to really, and I don't want to say neutralize, because I think we need to acknowledge, but also to kind of do the opposite and bring that positivity influence in their teams and their organization as we navigating through a year that nobody knows what's going to happen.
Right. And I think that's a great question. One of the, a couple of things that we found, because we asked people, senior leaders, CEOs and other senior leaders, how did you do? And it turned out that they did a lot of things that you would say, but that's not new. It was kind of like old wine, new bottle. They kind of rediscovered things that maybe they said, oh, that's not fashionable anymore. For example, one of the people we interviewed, he's a division director for a company that operates power plants. And of course, power plants know about crisis because they've been through a number of them. And he said we had to learn how to get comfortable with dealing with incomplete information. And we had to get comfortable with saying to our people, look, this is what we know, but stay tuned. Things may change in the future. And he said, for me, that was a difficult, that was a heavy lift to get to that point, because we're so used as leaders, we want to be seen as all knowing and all powerful and whatever we say, but things were changing so quickly. You'd get a new directive from the CDC or the World Health Organization or the state government or the local government or your industry association that said, do this, don't do that. So things had to be, but the thing that you wanted to do was to communicate. The worst thing would be to say, I can't communicate, I can't make an announcement unless I'm absolutely sure that this is in stone. Well, no, it has to be, and you have to get comfortable with that sort of thing. Another thing was to create sort of what, it sounds a little hokey, but it was really what it was. It was a community of caring about people in the organization. And to get out, if you were up in the executive suite, to get out and start walking the floors. I interviewed the CEO of a hospital, and he every day was walking the floors of the hospital, where the patients were, where the staff, where the doctors, where the nurses were, and saying, how are you doing? What can I do to help? What do you need? And sometimes people said, we need more N95 masks. And he would have to say, we can't get them, but we're trying like hell to get them. But when we do, you will get them. And that kind of thing, because people wanted to know that you're there, that you care. I mean, he told me stories, like he said one day I went out to I was going out to the parking lot to go home. And he said, I see one of my nurses in the car and I don't know why she's just sitting in the car. And I go up and I realized that she's crying. And he said, she rolled down the window and I said, what's wrong? And she said, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure. She said, I'm afraid of going home and bringing the virus home to my family. And yet I don't want to let my team down in the hospital. And he realized at that point, he said, I needed to provide some mental health services for the people in the organization. So we have people on staff that can do that. And we have pastors and rabbis and the like that can do that. And so they made them available as well. So we had that sort of thing. Because things change, as you said, in-person meetings could not be done in many cases. I interviewed the CEO of a company that owns 21 restaurants. They're called it's a chain called Red Robin. And he also owns one called that is they're wing stop, they're called. And he used to have meetings of the general managers of, I mean, of course, they couldn't do that anymore. So he would have just a telephone meeting or a Zoom meeting with all of them. And they finally started talking they would talk about what's working. You know, how are you handling the menu? What do you do with deliveries? How are you making sure the staff is safe? How are you making sure customers are safe? All kinds of questions like that. And people started sharing, well, I'm doing this and it seems to really be working. And they were sharing things among the 21 general managers. He said, Glenn, that may sound like geez, normal behavior to you, but it wasn't to us because prior to that, those 21 were competitive. Everybody wanted to be the number one restaurant in sales and in revenue and in customer satisfaction and turnover rates and all that sort of thing. Now we were being collaborative. So we went from competitive to collaborative doing that sort of thing. Empowerment. You remember empowerment? That used to be a favorite of ours, right? Suddenly that became a thing. Why? Because people were out doing the job and there was no supervision because everybody was remote. So we suddenly realized we had to trust these people to make decisions for customers, for their people, for patients, and they were doing it. They suddenly, and so many of these leaders told me, they said, suddenly realized we got some very good people that work here. All we needed to do was unleash them, and that's what they did. So they started, for example, we interviewed the CEO of Amtrak, the railroad company, and he started walking the platforms and riding the trains and saying to the conductors on the train, what do you need? How can I help? And so they said, passengers are supposed to wear masks, and many of them, were just ornery. They're getting on and they won't wear the mask. And he said, do not fight with them. Do not get into any kind of argument or altercation with them. Here's what I want you to do. Let them sit wherever they want. The other passengers are the ones I want you to be concerned about, and say to them, if you're not comfortable sitting in this car with this person or persons, you can move your seat and I will help you move your seat to another car. So those kinds of innovations, but you had to be down on the floor talking to people and showing that you cared and you were concerned. So there are all sorts of things. And of course, a lot of collaboration was going on. We had a lot of examples of really high level collaboration that was just extraordinary during this time. There were just some great things. And of course, many of those things you hope that and many of them did continue because they said, wow, this stuff works. Let's continue.
Absolutely.
So,
Because that was the key, right? I think the companies that stay the same die, and the companies that innovated, like you were saying, they're the ones thriving. And I mean, we can talk about this, but one thing that came to mind is you were saying this amazing stuff about positive influence leader, is how you added more to this positive leadership movement and how it reinforced even greater to be a positive leader, right? And with your book and your research and the work that you do and the assessments that you have and at that positive influence. So if you're listening towards the end, because I told Glenn that I will save this for the very end. So there's a gift for you. Glenn has a gift for you. So Glenn, if you want to share with the audience.
Sure. So there's a couple of books, but let's just pick the most recent book, which was Positive Influence Leadership in a Time of Crisis. What I will say is the first 5 people who send me an email with their mailing address, I will send them a signed complimentary copy of that book. They send it to Glenn, Glenn, at thepositiveinfluenceleader.com. Glenn at thepositiveinfluenceleader.com. First 5 that we get, we will send a signed copy of the book to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Glenn. And where can people find you? I know they got your email address. That assessment looks very attractive for leaders to take it. They go to
Yeah,
the same domain.
our publisher is HRD Press. HRD, it's obviously Human Resource Development. HRD Press. That's where you can find the book. Of course, you can find it on Amazon. Everything you can find on Amazon. The instrument that I mentioned, you can find at HRD Press. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. You can reach me, Glenn Parker, on LinkedIn. I'm happy to communicate with you. Happy to have you connect with me. I'm also on Facebook, so but most of that is sort of personal stuff. But certainly willing to. I'd love to have new friends, and so yeah. So I look forward to hearing from folks. And by the way, you people, if you do send me your mailing address, once we send you the book, we get rid of the mail. I don't do mailing, so you're not going to get a whole series of requests for, I'm not selling, T-shirts or anything like that.
So I think the only responsibility is that they apply whatever style major, right?
Right.
Their top, and then
Right.
whatever comes along to their organization
And
or
by the way,
home. Right?
that applies to you too, Javier.
That's right.
You send me your mailing address, I will send you a signed copy.
I will definitely do that. Glenn, it has been a tremendous pleasure. Great day. You inspire me quite a bit. I am so glad that there's people like you in the world, because I think you are really helping individuals out there. And most of all, you helping companies where they take care of individuals, they take care of communities, cities, right? And that's what we need. We need more leaders that influence their positivity and create greatness in others, so we can lead into a better world, because that's what we're all looking for.
Thank you.
You're
It's
welcome.
been great having a conversation with you. I look forward to perhaps again.